Do you remember Sue's talk from last week? She is laughing over here. She's hoping no one says no. Stir Up the Gift of God was its title. And this subject always gets me going. She said in there, the greatest gift that we're given is the power of thought. The power to hold a thought and to be part of having that come manifest into our lives. We are so lucky to live in a universe that is influenceable by us, right? It lets us know that we matter. And I told Sue it was an incredibly inspiring talk to me. It's not the first time I've heard the subject, right? I was raised in unity. It was the subject that really sang to me as a kid. I wasn't particularly happy with my life experience, and I grabbed onto that. And when I got into my 20s, I practiced it like crazy. I held the vision and tried to get as clear with the vision of what I wanted my life to look like. And then I maybe did a couple of visioning boards. I remember visioning for a specific car I wanted and some other things. But mainly what I did was, with that vision in mind, I then worked to bring that vision into manifestation. I can remember that, one of the things I had a very clear goal about where I wanted my career to go, and I was in public accounting. And I wanted to move to the next step of being a senior, and I approached a senior that I respected, and he said, "Oh, then you might want to take this class, and you might want to do this, and if you attend these meetings, I think it might really help you." And so I did that, right? I took action, as Sue said. It's not magic. You don't get to sit on your sofa and vision your life and whammo, presto, it happens. We have to take action according to either how we're guided or how our heart is calling us, whatever is happening. But an interesting thing happened for me. Oh, and by the way, it works. It works. I got lots of physical things that I wanted. By the time I was 28, I was vice president of a company. It works. But also about that time, I realized that something wasn't working. And that was that while the circumstances of my life were absolutely incredible, while the things I had were beautiful, the inner experience of my life had not changed much. That I still felt insecure. That I still felt like I was a fraud because I felt deficient. That I still questioned whether I could really relate to straight people safely. There were just so many things internally that were the same as when I was a kid. It was sobering. Maybe some of you can relate. You're waiting for, when's this spiritual thing going to kick in? And if we understand how the ego works, it actually makes sense that it doesn't change through the manifestation of things. For you see, the ego can be thought of as the terrific card catalog. And it keeps track of all of the experiences of our lives, particularly those that were most difficult. And then it forms an identity around that. So, for example, you're not just the person that experienced not getting loved enough, or the person that experienced being rejected. You are the unlovable person. You are the person that is rejected. You are the person that's not pretty enough or handsome enough or athletic enough, or does anyone else want to add to the list? Smart enough, yeah, really good one, right. Quick enough, humorous enough. I mean, come on. We all have our areas where they got us. And here's the challenge. That identity, for the most part, is unconscious. We're not really aware. I thought it was great, Seth, when the minister or preacher said, what are you or who are you? We don't really know who we are. The thing is that the card catalog then forms a view. The ego works really hard to hold on to it. It doesn't want us to forget at an unconscious level because that's what keeps us safe. Okay, you are the one that gets rejected, so don't put yourself out there because you're going to get rejected, or you're the one that never gets what you want. So it then forms a way of being in the world for us. And what's fascinating? Have you ever, thought, why do these things keep happening to me? Well, it's really interesting that if we see things through a certain lens, it's fascinating. Like, I was with my siblings last weekend, and we were talking about a specific experience that happened in our childhood. And there's 5 of us. 5 different stories, right? Because we're seeing through a different lens. So, one, we don't exactly know what is happening around us, but it sure feels like rejection, or it sure feels like I'm being shamed for not knowing, or whatever. But the other piece is exactly what Sue was talking about. We're holding to an identity unconsciously, and our life is manifesting that identity for us over and over again. We live in a generous universe, but this part of it's kind of a bummer. The cool thing about the universe, though, is there is terrific power within. Eric Butterworth, Discover the Power Within. There couldn't be a better title. Because not only can we manifest, but we can also go in and explore. So I sit on the board of Unity World Headquarters for a few more months. My term ends at the end of the year. We have long board meetings, days of board meetings, and those happen for me this week. But the cool thing is, inevitably, with every quarterly meeting, we meet quarterly, we have some kind of development, some kind of leader development in them. So we all benefit. And this quarter, we were asked to, in advance, listen to a podcast that Brene Brown did. Here it is. She was interviewing Aiko Bethea. I didn't know Aiko. Does any of you? Yeah, so she is actually an expert on inclusivity, diversity, and equality. And the title of it was Inclusivity at Work, the Heart of Hard Conversations. But what it was really about was, how do you transform a culture? And I learned so much during it. They said that so often when you have an organization and you're trying to transform the culture, you do it transactionally. And you need to. You work on your values. You start setting up policy. You may set goals, like we're going to increase the diversity that we see in our organization. We're going to hire more diversely, whatever. And then you have measurable ways of saying how you're doing. That's all transactional. What's interesting is transactional brings about change, but not deep change. It brings about change as long as you're focused on it, but when you move to the next hot issue, you tend to go back to the way you were. So how do you bring about lasting change? How do you bring about real transformation? It's relationally. It makes sense, right? That it's when you're somehow touched, when it's about you or someone you love. And I'm curious, let's just see how quick you are, without any judgment. How do we usually communicate amongst each other in a way that touches each other? What format do we use? Questions is good, but stories. Who said stories? Yeah, stories, Beth, you're right. That when we tell a story, especially if we're willing to be vulnerable in the story, right, we tend to touch one another. Now, they said you need to bring stories into transforming an organization. And what I'm saying is we need to bring story in to transform ourselves and questions. Very good. So just for the heck of it, I thought, are they on to something? So and I should have just called you Colleen, because Colleen's our storyteller. But I just Googled the power of story. And this came up from, it's called an article called The Power of Storytelling. It's from the Health Foundation. It was published in 2016, I believe. When a story catches our attention and engages us, we are more likely to absorb the message and meaning within it than if the same message was presented simply in facts and figures. Yeah, there's a lot of heads nodding. We're getting it, right? So when I say that this can be applied to our process, we can create a lot of things in our life transactionally. In fact, they broke us down into small groups, and the very first thing that we decided, we were a group of ministers, so not everyone on the board's a minister, not everyone on the staff, on the executive team is ministers. Well, I think maybe the executive team is entirely ministers, now that I think about it. But anyway, it happened I got placed with other ministers, and one of the first things we said was how easy it is to interpret what we teach in Unity as transactional. Just get clear about what you think. Transactional means you're heading in your head. Get clear about what you think, and then affirm it like crazy about 10,000 times. And figure out what action you need to take, and then it all can be transactional. You can think you forget that we say, check in with your heart. What is it that your heart's telling you to do? What are your desires? What are your heart's desires? Forget all that. It's just, hey, I want that new car. I want that new house. Oh, I want that promotion. And we can forget. It becomes transactional. But if we want to have a change in our life experience, it's important that it become relational. And not just relational with another, but relational with us. What's our story? You see, it's really easy to get caught up in the story of what's happening right now. But what we want to be more or what we have the opportunity to be more interested in is, what is the underlying story here for me that this story has got my attention? Sue used the analogy of planting a seed, and I named this talk Weeding the Garden. It's interesting in our consciousness. We can plant lots of seeds and they grow. I got to see that in my 20s. But if we want to change the experience, the felt experience of our life, we need to go in and pull a few weeds. Now, I don't mean reject anything. I mean, we got to go in really and sort of dig down in and see what's happening. And this is where not only we get to do our own work, but this is where others can help us. And there's a cute little video that we're going to look at now to get an idea of maybe what shouldn't happen.
texture, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on, if you would just...
Don't...
Try to take things my way.
So let's just kind of break it down a little bit. You probably don't need it broken down too much, but we'll break it down a little bit. So first of all, the woman was exactly right. So often we want to get focused on the symptom, right? That there's a nail in my forehead, right? But she said and I think we were all laughing, but she said it's not about the nail. Well, if we could all remember that, if we could just remember that, it's not about the nail. It's so funny. I had a boyfriend once who was so much like my dad, and it got me into therapy, which was good. And I must have spent hundreds of dollars just talking about him and how he needed to change. And the therapist would work hard trying to, well, that's probably not the problem. Really, what was the problem? It was the lens that I'm looking through, right? I'm seeing my dad. It's an object relation I have with my dad. The guy becomes my dad. He would say, I'm not your dad. That didn't help very much. So we get to see that, one, that's not the situation. And often, and they blame it on guys, but women, can you relate too of wanting to fix things? A few women can. There's a few nodding, but all the guys are nodding like crazy. Yes, we want to fix. Why is it? Why do we want to run in and fix? Studies show, I wouldn't have been able to tell you this on my own because I'm a guy, but studies show that we want to fix it because if we don't fix it, then there's a chance that we're going to move deeper with it. And we're going to feel our own discomfort. Our own discomfort at feeling powerless, or it depends on kind of what the issue is that's going on there, but it can get us, right? So fixing, not a good thing. But we also get to see something really powerful in the woman. She was able to tell us, hey, the nail is not the issue, which the insinuation is it's something deeper. But do you notice she needs some help moving deeper? She kept it very surfacey, very transactional. This is where the questions come in, right? Like, what are some of the questions? What kind of tension is it? Is it familiar to you? Where have you experienced it before? Does the tension have any words to it? What's it trying to tell you? Because what's fascinating about also the human experience, and very mysterious, is whatever it is that is held within us. Because the ego, while it holds on to the memory, it holds on to it to keep us away from it. It thinks we can't handle it. But the activity of God, the activity of your very nature, is always working hard in you to bring to the surface that which needs to be healed, that which needs to be seen. And the key is, what's got you? Where's your reactivity? What makes you think that you're alone? That you're somehow not going to be able to make it through this experience? Now, you may be sitting out there going, well, shoot, there's a lot of stuff in my card catalog. How can I possibly get through all of it? When I was a kid, I was walking home from school one day and they were tearing down I can't remember if it was an apartment building or just some kind of building, but they had a jackhammer mounted to some piece of equipment down on the ground that had what would you call it, an attenuating arm? Is that what you call it? Or something like that. And the driver, the operator, was just punching bunches of holes in this floor. And all of a sudden, the floor collapsed. The whole thing, boom. It's powerful. It's the same thing with our spirituality. When we're willing to follow whatever is up for us now, and then if there's something else the next day or the next 10 minutes, follow that back to what is the source? Because you see, when you hear your own story and you feel into it in your body, you're not just saying it from your head, but you feel how dramatic your reaction is and what's going on for you, it tends to engage our heart. We feel compassion for ourselves. We're curious about what this was. We're taken back to the experience where we didn't have the support of an adult, inevitably, that we have now. And we begin to soften. And as we hit more and more of those areas, then the ego structure begins to relax. The lens falls away. We begin to see life as it is. I wrote down some words from my own experience. This has really gotten sped up in me lately, and I wrote down that I feel a sense of lightness, a sense of fullness, a sense of having no mind. It's wild. And yet I function fine. And if I'm not, I'm sure you'll tell me. Richness. I have no sense of deficiency, that there's nothing missing in me. It feels like I'm being who and what I am. And here's the key. And it's enough. Are you ready for that? You are enough. That was not my experience in my late 20s. It was this driving, there's got to be something that'll bring me relief. Boom, boom, boom. So there is lots of power within. There's the power to create and manifest, and I'm just letting you know that for some of us, our egos grab onto that because, oh, good, we can keep it transactional. But if you really want to transform your life experience, we need to get in and weed the garden. We need to get in, and we don't have to look far. The next time you're activated, be curious about it. Is this familiar? I'm going to try not to get too hooked on what this guy cutting me off in traffic or whatever. Why am I so upset? I survived it. How is this familiar? What does it bring up in me? What that does is engages us at a heart level. Allows us to be the adult back with that child that felt so helpless or violated or traumatized or whatever it was. And that child relaxes. We relax. Eventually the floor falls. The whole ego structure relaxes. Now, when I say that, It's taken a few years. So don't rush it, and don't let your judge get on you for it taking some time. But then what waits for us is the fullness, the richness, the contentment of just being. It's an incredible gift. But we need to use the power within to claim it.